Today's learning lunch is about Awaken the Giant Within, which is by Tony Robbins, who, for those of you that you all know that Tony Robbins had a big impact on me. This was probably in fact, it was definitely the first personal development book I read. I just didn't read anything of this sort of stuff before. This was handed to me by a mate that I used to work with. And it was influential on, massively influential on making me think about the way I approached my life. But I have to admit, it was a pretty embarrassing book to read at the time. This is an updated cover. I should have tracked down the original cover because it was such a cheesy, Tony's got these massive teeth that are bigger than I am, and it's this cheesy smile. And I remember a friend of mine spotting it at some point, and he ripped the Mickey out of me for reading this book. And the cover was so bad that it was the sort of thing that you almost wanted to, if you're sitting on the tube, the joke I used to tell people was that I would read this but hide it inside a porn mag, because I'd rather have been seen reading a porn mag on the tube than this. But it is an incredible book, and so I just want to spend a bit of time telling you about what it covers. And really, I suppose you could summarize it with 3 points to start with, and that is that anytime you sincerely want to make a change, the first thing that you must do is to raise your standards and believe that you can meet them. Second thing is that we must change our belief system and develop a sense of certainty that we can and will meet the new standards before we actually do. And then finally, it talks about the fact that it's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently. Something I've talked a bit about already in other learning lunches from things like the 5 a.m. club. But one of the things that Tony talks about quite a lot in this book and in anything that you watch with regards to Tony Robbins is that so much about what we do is about making decisions, because almost always making some decision is better than making no decision. And the 3 decisions that control your destiny are your decisions about what you focus on, your decisions about what things mean to you, and your decisions about what to do to create the results you desire. So making a true decision means committing to achieving a result, and that cutting yourself off from any other possibility is the way forward. And he talks a lot about decisions. Probably his most famous saying, in fact, is that it's in our moments of decision our destiny is shaped. And so, the power of being able to make decisions and get on and make changes in our life is really important. And he also says that a real decision is measured by the fact that you've taken a new action. If there's no action, you haven't truly decided. So it's all very well deciding you want to do something, but if you haven't taken an action, then you actually haven't truly made that decision. And so actually, just to kind of finish off on that point, he always talks about saying you shouldn't make a decision without at least taking one step. So always make sure that you take one step to action that decision. He talks about setting your standards. So if you don't set a baseline standard for what you'll accept in your life, you'll find it's easy to slip into behaviors and attitudes or a quality of life that's far below what you deserve. So don't settle or fall into the trap of failing to define your standards. If you do so, you'll likely find yourself in a suboptimal reality. And he says that in life, lots of people know what to do, but very few people actually do what they know. Knowing is not enough. You must take action. It's all very well and good reading a book, but you've got to do something with that information for it to be actually effective. And he also talks about how successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers. I'll come back to quality questions in a bit. He talks about profound knowledge, and what profound knowledge is any simple distinction, strategy, belief, skill, or tool that the minute we understand it, we can apply it to make immediate increases in the quality of our lives. So in the pursuit of truth, You might constantly look for profound knowledge, which once identified has the power to immediately transform your perception and the quality of your life. It's not the events of our lives that shape us, but our beliefs as to what those events mean. So for example, you might have exactly the same thing happen to two different people. One person might get upset by it and somebody else might actually be really happy with that situation. It's the beliefs that we attach to things that drive our emotions, not the things themselves. And another saying that I loved from this book is, the meeting of preparation with opportunity generates the offspring we call luck. So the meeting of preparation and opportunity generates the offspring that we call luck. And I suppose just linking that to the profound knowledge thing, the more you're learning, the more you're preparing, so that when the opportunity does present itself, you are in the right place to receive that opportunity. And he talks about your decisions and your perceptions determining your life. So know that it is your decisions and not your conditions that determine your destiny. It's never the events of our lives, but the meaning we attach to those events, how we interpret them, that shapes who we are today and who we'll become tomorrow. If you're in a reality that you don't enjoy, then you need to make the right decisions to improve your reality. No matter how horrible the circumstances you face might be, it's up to you to find the pathways to improve those circumstances. So again, come back to that saying, it's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. And he talks about, in Awaken the Giant Within, this pain and pleasure concept. So pain and pleasure, everything you and I do, we do either out of a need to avoid pain or our design to gain pleasure. Usually people will do more to avoid pain than they will do to gain pleasure. And we see that, of course, with their investments. They're much more worried about markets falling than they are excited about markets growing. So if we link massive pain to any behavior or emotional pattern, we will avoid indulging it at all costs. We can use this understanding to harness the force of pain and pleasure to change virtually anything in our lives. But if we fail to direct our own associations to pain and pleasure, we're living no better than animals or machines, continually reacting to our environment, allowing whatever comes up next to determine the direction and the quality of our lives. The truth is that we can learn to condition our minds, bodies, and emotions to link pain or pleasure to whatever it is that we choose. And by changing what we link pain and pleasure to, we will instantly change our behaviors. This is the best example I can give you of this, is that when I started eating on a much healthier basis as a result of attending Tony's Unleash the Power Within event, originally it was painful to eat the healthy stuff and give up the unhealthy stuff. But over time, I realized that actually I was gaining much more pleasure from eating the healthy stuff. And I associated, that most of you know that I tend to have a 5 days on, 2 days off approach. So for 5 days, I eat really healthily. 2 days, I do whatever I like. But what I started to realize was that I've programmed myself to do over time, is realize that actually I crave the healthy stuff on a Monday more than I crave the unhealthy stuff on a Friday, which has got to be the right way around, because it drives my motivation. So nearly everything we do stems from our desire to avoid pain and pleasure. When you recognize this fundamental principle of how you operate, you can make more sound decisions, better understand what drives you, and reshape what you associate pain and pleasure to. He then talks a bit about problems and problems not being permanent. Achievers rarely, if ever, see a problem as a permanent, while those who fail see even the smallest problems as permanent. Successful people understand that problems are impermanent and can be solved through action. Instead of dwelling on the challenge they face, they accept it and find a way to move forward. So identify your problems, but give your power and energy to solutions. Then he talks about how happiness is born in growth. I've said it many, many times. If you're not growing, you're dying. Growth is one of our 6 human needs. If we want to be truly happy, we need to know that we're growing as an individual. So in order to succeed and be happy, we've got to be constantly improving the quality of our lives, constantly growing and expanding. When we constantly learn, grow and push ourselves, we're much more content. If we remain stagnant and stop growing, that's when misery starts to find its way into our lives. So you've got to constantly looking at ways that you can learn and grow and develop. And really that should be something that you do every day. As we talked about when we went through the 5 a.m. club, really as part of that victory hour, what are you learning? How are you growing as an individual during that victory hour each day? Then he goes on to talk about reinforcing good behaviors. So any pattern of emotion or behavior that is continually reinforced will become an automatic and conditioned response. Anything we fail to reinforce will eventually dissipate. So the patterns, emotions, and behaviors that we reinforce become the habits and beliefs that determine the quality of our lives. When you understand this, you can more intelligently design your life to reinforce empowering actions and remove disempowering ones. And it's also about the quality of the questions that we ask. So quality questions create a quality life. The questions you ask yourself and others really do matter. If you constantly ask yourself, why is this happening to me? Then you're bound to be miserable and feel that the world is against you. But if instead you ask, what can I do to improve my situation? You'll find yourself solving the problems that you're facing and consistently improving your life. Tony is also renowned for saying there's good experiences and learning experiences. So how can you learn from everything that doesn't go quite your way? And if you employ this approach, it is incredibly empowering that if every time something doesn't go the way you intended, you look and go, well, what can I learn from this situation? Then he talks about how to handle your emotions. And the quickest, simplest, and most powerful way that he knows to handle any emotion is to remember a time when you felt a similar emotion and realize that you've successfully handled this emotion before. Whether you're experiencing anger, sadness, disappointment, shock, or some other negative emotion, try to remember a time in the past where you experienced and overcame that particular emotion. Perhaps you did something that helped you move through it, or perhaps time mended the problem. If you can remember that you've overcome that same emotion in the past, you'll be better prepared to handle the emotion you're currently experiencing. He also talks a lot, not just in this book, but in everything he does, about gratitude. And he says that when you are grateful, fear disappears and abundance appears. It's impossible to feel anger while you're feeling grateful. So if you feel grateful, and that's one of the reasons why it's so powerful, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, talking or writing down or entering into the app that I recommended in Friday Footnotes last week, which is a 5-minute journal, noting down what you're grateful for. Just 3 things that you're grateful for, in the same way that we did at our Brain Trust meeting this Monday. It's just a really empowering start to the day. Then he talks about setting goals to become the person that you want to be. Achieving goals by themselves will never make us happy in the long term. It's who you become as you overcome the obstacles necessary to achieve your goals that can give you the deepest and most long-lasting sense of fulfillment. Reaching your goals is not what drives you to happiness. Rather, it's the person you become and the challenges you conquer in the process of pursuing your goals that drives your fulfillment. People are not lazy. They simply have impotent goals. That is, goals that don't inspire them. You've got to have goals that are inspiring. And actually, often the biggest challenge with writing goals is thinking up big enough, exciting enough goals. But it's such an important part of the process. Otherwise, you just will not get motivated by them. And then he goes on to talk about how the security of the present is our enemy. All too often, the security of a mediocre present is more comfortable than the adventure of trying to be more in the future. And people get stuck in their present circumstances, even when those circumstances are mediocre, because it's more comfortable than taking the steps to become more in the future. If you find yourself in this situation, choose the adventure of becoming more. You'll often learn things that you could have never expected, and your life will improve as a result of that learning. So focus on where you want to go, not on what you fear. And your past does not equal your future. The only thing that's keeping you from getting what you want is the story that you keep telling yourself. So I'm not going to go into this your own story today, but Tony talks a lot in other areas, not so much in this book, but talks a lot about the story we tell ourselves. And that's what keeps us in the mediocrity of the present. Then he talks a little bit about our values and how important they are. The only way for us to have long-term happiness is to live by our highest ideals, to consistently act in accordance with what we believe our life is truly about. But we can't do this if we don't clearly know what our values are. This is the biggest tragedy in most people's lives. Many people know what they want to have, but they have no idea of who they want to be. Anything you have difficulty making an important decision on, you can be assured that it's a result of not being completely clear about your own values. So instead of thinking about what you want, think about who you want to be. Think about the qualities of people that you admire and write those qualities down. Determine the qualities that are most important to you and live by those values. And when you face a difficult decision, you can turn to your values and make that decision an awful lot easier in the light of those values. It's what you practice in private that you will be rewarded for in public. So as long as you know what those values are and then you act by them, that's what you'll get rewarded by. Then he talks a bit about expectations and how important it is to communicate your expectations. So if you ever feel angry or upset with someone, remember it's your rules that are upsetting you, not their behavior. Don't expect people to live by your rules if you don't clearly communicate what they are. Remember, the most empowering rule is to enjoy yourself no matter what happens. Often we get angry or upset with someone when they violate our expectations or rules about how we believe they should have acted. However, if we haven't communicated our expectations to people, we can't expect other people to live by those expectations. So if someone upsets or angers you, remember that to first communicate your expectations. Finally, design your rules to be empowering. If you have a rule that you will enjoy yourself no matter what happens, you'll find yourself feeling less negative about the circumstances you face. So think about what those rules would be for you. Then he talks a little bit about the difference between fitness and health. And this ties in really nicely with that app recommendation in Friday footnotes, because there is a significant difference between fitness and health. Fitness is the physical ability to perform an athletic activity. Health, however, is defined as the state where all of the systems of the body, so the nervous, the muscular, the skeletal, the circulatory, the digestive, the lymphatic, the hormonal, etc., are all working in an optimal way. If you can be fit but not healthy, and healthy but not fit. So remembering this distinguish between these two terms that puts you in a better and healthier, more balanced life. And this is something really interesting. I was chatting to on the Triathlon podcast. I was interviewing a guy called Dan Miller last week, who is an American guy that's an absolute guru in the world of nutrition. And he was talking particularly about endurance athletes, but he was saying a lot of them see food as fuel. So they'll put in enough energy, enough carbs or enough fat, if they're trying to burn fat rather than carbs, but they don't think about the micronutrients, the thing that keeps us healthy. And actually, it's the shortfalls in those micronutrients that lead us more likely to become ill and have, that can be short-term illnesses or much bigger, longer-term problems. And that's why measuring what you put into your body and identifying where those shortfalls are and then filling those gaps can put you in the healthiest position possible. In fact, I asked him why. So basically, when I finished Unleash the Power Within, I started taking wheatgrass and omega-3, and I took those for 5 years, and I didn't get one ailment during those 5 years. I then decided that perhaps I hadn't got any ailments because I was doing all of this fitness stuff and I was much healthier than I had been previously. So I decided to stop taking wheatgrass and omega-3. And in the following 2 years, I picked up 2 or 3 bugs. And so what I did was I reintroduced wheatgrass about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, and omega-3. Guess what? Since then, touch wood, I've not been ill once. And Dan Miller said that that's because what I'm doing is I'm filling up on more of those micronutrients, and that is what is boosting my immune system. So it's really important to think about that difference between health and fitness. He talks a little bit about money. Obviously, in his more recent books, he talks a lot about money, but he talks about the key to wealth in Awaken the Giant Within as well. The key to wealth is to be more valuable. So how can you add more value to other people? If you have more skills, more ability, more intelligence, specialized knowledge, capability to do things that a few other people can do, or if you just think creatively and contribute on a massive scale, you can earn more than you ever thought was possible. It's how much value can you add to other people? When you provide more value, you will receive a larger financial reward. So if you find yourself not making the income that you want, find ways to become more valuable, whether that's through increasing your skills, i.e. taking exams, for example, in our world, increasing your abilities, your knowledge, or your creative capacity. Things like you're working on the business that we ask you to do. How can you identify ways that we can improve the way that we run our business? Because the more you do that, the more value you become and the more you will earn. Success is doing what you want to do, when you want, where you want to, with whom you want, as much as you want. And so that, but if you want to be successful, you've got to create that value for other people. Then he goes on to talk a little bit about urgency or versus importance. So have you ever had a day where you worked your tail off, completed every single thing on your to-do list or your time planner, but at the end of the day, you still felt somewhat unfulfilled? Well, that's perhaps because you did everything that was urgent and demanded your attention in the moment, but you didn't do what was important, the things that make a difference in the long term. So developing the ability to differentiate urgency from importance will directly impact your ability to be and feel successful in your personal and professional life. If you constantly focus on what's urgent instead of what's important, you might end up working your arse off without actually feeling or getting the rewards that you seek. So a few sort of short things to just finish off here. In essence, if we want to direct our lives, we must take control of our consistent actions. It's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently. It's the compound effect of doing something consistently, having good habits, that makes a massive difference to our lives. Or indeed your fitness. So for example, the fact that I did the Ironman last year, if I tried, 3 years prior to that, I hadn't been running, I hadn't been swimming since I was at school. And so if I tried to do an Ironman in that first year, it would have been completely impossible. It would have been so far off the unachievable scale. It's not even worth entertaining. But by installing good habits and fitness habits, my fitness grew and grew and grew and got to the point where actually not only did I do an Ironman, but I did a far faster time than I thought was possible. Something else that he talks about is often what seems impossible in the short term becomes very possible in the long term if you persist. comes exactly back to that whole Ironman principle. In that if I'd said, I want to do an Ironman in the next 3 months or 6 months, it would have been entirely impossible. By putting it on as a 3-year goal, so well, actually, okay, if I chunk that back, what have I got to do this year to be on track to be able to do that in 3 years' time? So we can achieve way more in the long term than we really think is possible. We just overestimate what we can achieve in the short term. And something else that you've just got to constantly bear in mind is that, and Tony uses the phrase, where attention goes, energy flows. And he talks about how, we've all heard the story of a car driving along, like through the Nevada desert on these massively straight roads, and it has a crash and it hits the only lamppost for 100 miles. And like, how did they actually manage, the chance of them hitting that lamppost was just ridiculous. But it's because, if you're out of control, what you tend to do when you're driving is you tend to look at the things that you want to avoid. But guess what happens? That's what you hit. So you've got to direct your focus on what's important to you. It's like riding a bike. If you want to learn how to ride a bike with no hands, which is something I never mastered as a child, but I have learned in recent years, you've got to look at where you want to go. Your instinct is look down at the road or down at the bike. But if you look down, guess where you're going to go? Down towards the tarmac. If you look at the horizon, where you want to go in the future, then that's where you'll go. And the same applies to your goals. Where your attention goes, energy flows. That's what you will end up achieving. And it's one of the reasons why writing down goals, which is something we're going to do in our energy meeting again towards the end of the year. And we'll get you along to join us on that as well, Matt, if you'd like to. Then that's why writing goals down is so important. So what I did was I just quickly went online and had a look at look for a kind of 5-ish minute Tony Robbins video, just to give you a bit of a feel for what the guy is all about and what he thinks you can do with regards to committing to your goals. So let me hopefully play this.
My mom wanted me to be a truck driver because that would mean I'd make $24,000 a year if I went to Truck Masters, and that would be twice what my father made. And she thought that would happen, but something inside of me said, I don't want to drive a truck. There's something else that matters more to me, and I decided I was not going to go for money instead of passion. And the reward's been pretty amazingly better than being a truck driver. Not about being a truck driver, it's just not what I was after. And I look back, and one of the things that helped me was my original teacher, Jim Rohn, was a personal development speaker. I went to hear him when I was 17. He said, so the first time I heard him, he said, it's really simple. If you want life to change, you got to change. If you want life to be better, you got to get better. It's only going to happen. And look, I'll show up for people, I'll lead them. But if you're constantly improving who you are and what you give, game over. People ask me, what does it take to be happy? I always tell them one word: progress. Progress equals happiness. Even if you're not where you want to be yet, if you're on the road, if you're improving, if you're making progress, you're going to love it. You're going to feel alive. On the other hand, it doesn't matter how successful you are. If you stop growing, you start dying inside. I've always had this belief. If you want to be successful at anything in life, never leave the sight of setting a goal without doing something that commits you to fulfillment. If you you're in state, right, when you do something, while you're in state, that's the time to commit yourself to something that makes you follow through. So I'd call somebody up, I'd schedule something, I'd walk in the next meeting, I'd sign up for the class, I'd enroll the guy who was going to mentor me, I'd set the meeting with a mastermind of people I met. I did something so that whatever I committed to, there was something when I went home that would pull me there. It's structured. This could be the greatest time you ever live if you control what you focus on. If you find a more empowering meeting, and if you decide to model the actions of those who succeeded before you. It can be the best financial time, the best emotional time, the best spiritual time of your life, but you better take control of your state. And if you think you're going to do it just right today, you're wrong. You're going to need to get yourself some rituals. Right now, every one of you in this room is controlled by your rituals. I don't just mean this one. I mean, every morning you get up. I know your body. I can look at your body right now, and I can guess your rituals. Some of you, your rituals to work out 5 times a week, I can see it clearly. 4 to 6 times a week, it's obvious. Because you couldn't look like that if you didn't do that. Some form of workout. I don't care if it's walking, lifting, whatever. Some of you, it's obvious. Lifting weights is part of it. You can see it on a man's muscles. I know what his rituals are. Because your life comes from your rituals. If you don't develop a ritual, you're kidding yourself. I don't need to agree with me on this. Raise your hand and say, ah. And there are rituals that put you in state, and there are rituals that take you out of state. But if you've got that focus, the target, and you got the toolbox, and you're still not getting what you want, it's because you got inner conflicts. That's what there's doing. You've got to resolve your inner conflicts. Because as I try to explain to you, 80% of success in anything is your psychology, and 20% is the mechanics. So those inner conflicts are when you take 2 steps forward, you're told 3 steps back. Right? When you say, well, I'm totally committed to this, but you don't follow through. This is my expertise, the why guy part. Why? Why do you keep saying you want this? You have crystal clarity, you have the tools, and you're still not getting it? There's a conflict in it. Align your life with what is most important to you. And then once you are in a position where you're aligned, guess what you'll do? Take action. You won't have to work at it. When everything's in alignment, there's nothing pulling you away, boom, you go for it. Progress comes when you tell yourself the truth and you're able to feel the uncertainty and take action anyway. The thing that stops is all this fear. It's no surprise. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, fear of not looking good. And that fear we can translate into the simple thing of uncertainty. Now, when you look at someone who's incredibly successful, you look at someone who's truly a leader in their life and in their field, the one thing they have in common is they exude this sense of certainty. Where's that come from? Is it inborn? Are they lucky? Are things just going their way? No, great leaders know how to step in the uncertainty and bring the certainty to the situation. Most people in life, we really feel like the level of stress in our life comes to how much of life do you feel like you control, or how much does life control you? Do you tend to control more of what's going on, or events controlling you? It's very easy that those events start to take control, unless we take control of what's between our ears, our own mind. You see, what you and I focus on massively affects how we feel, whether we're thriving or surviving. If you focus on what you can't control, if you focus on the past, if you focus on what's missing from your life constantly, that pattern of focus will make you frustrated, overwhelmed, depressed. It don't even matter if you're taking antidepressants. If you keep focusing on what you can't control, what's missing from your life, you're going to feel depressed. You can take as many antidepressants as you want. Focus equals power. If you want to thrive, you got to focus on what you can control. You got to focus on the difference you can, and you got to focus on what's already in your life that you're grateful for. So you got to find a story that's going to empower you to act. A story that's going to get you to find the breakthrough. Because otherwise, with a lousy story, you'll never find the strategy, or you come up with a reason why it's too expensive, you can't get there, you can't access it, or you'll even get the strategy and then half-ass apply it, just so you can reward your story that says it doesn't work as you tried. Resourcefulness is the ultimate resource. And if you don't have what you want, stop telling yourself the story because you want the money all the time. That's bullshit. It's because you haven't committed yourself where you can burn your boats. If you want to take the fucking island, burn your fucking boats. And you will take the island because people, when they're going to either die or succeed, tend to succeed. But most of us give ourselves a way out, and that's why we don't have a good one. Let's think about where this journey began for me. My desire to serve. Every day before I get on stage, I do this thing to put myself in a big state, and then my last words are, use me, Lord. Yes, that's my prayer. And every day my goal is to be a blessing in people's lives. Just do more, give more, share more, create more. What you need will be there. It's like air. You don't stop to think about when you take a breath whether it'll be there or not. It's always going to be there. Yeah. You just got to do your part.
There we go. So that is my learning lunch on Awaken the Giant Within. And I really encourage you to read it. I think it's an incredibly powerful book. Also, if you want to get a feel for what it's like to be at one of Tony Robbins' events, then on Netflix, you can watch I'm Not Your Guru. It's about an hour and a half. is a brilliant documentary. Even if you're super skeptical on what Tony talks about, you will get a massive insight into the sort of thing that he does. And just remember that it's in our moments of decision that our destiny is shaped. So why live an ordinary life when you can live an extraordinary life? So I hope that's been useful. I hope that's given you some a little bit of inspiration in a few different areas. And I really would love you to be thinking about this, that when you're crafting your goals for next year as part of the energy meeting that we're going to do on setting up our goals, which we'll do in December, and set up our goals for an amazing 2021 and the years beyond. So thank you, guys.